so happy to have you here on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me, Cheryl. I'm happy to be here.
We were just talking before we hit record that we have tried and failed to meet up for this podcast 6 times now. So I'm
Yeah.
expecting a great discussion now that we finally have our schedules
Well,
aligned.
we've talked so many times. How could it not be?
I know.
I think it's going to be it's mostly in reconnecting timeframes, and it's been both of us. It's not been either one individually. So
Yeah, it's just been
yeah,
it's been a wild year, and you have
yeah,
so many great things happening. But before we dive into your book, I want to talk to you a little bit about your background. So tell us
sure.
who you are, where you work, and what makes what you're doing so special.
Yeah, I grew up the son of a Baptist preacher, and so I grew up in the Low Country of South Carolina. I'm currently an assistant professor for supply chain at North Greenville University, a Christian institution in northern South Carolina, or near the upstate in South Carolina, just above Greenville. It's in Greenville County. And I teach supply chain operations, project management, business related classes to um, all the way from freshmen all the way through grad classes for the university. Now, the there was a 30 year, right? That sounds like an awful long time, but I was about 30 years where I was actually working in supply chain. I designed the logistics solutions, whether it was warehousing, transportation, or international moves for multiple third-party logistics companies, as well as manufacturers and distributors. So I spent, my career doing that, and now that's what I'm teaching at the university level.
Great. But you really have a passion for retention,
Yeah.
for making sure that college is accessible. And so how does this
Yeah.
career in supply chain get you to where you are today? Like what's the
Well,
intersection between those things?
it's the reduction of waste. All right. We supply chain people have a fascination with reducing waste. I mean, it is our everyday desire. And we do a lot of implementations of new technologies, new operations, new business processes. So we spend the majority of our time thinking about when we do a transition, first of all, making a process better than it was before. But because of those changes, are the people going to be successful with those changes? So I cannot tell you how many implementations I've done because I don't know over 30 years. It's just ridiculous. But I've been always, and not just myself, all of people who work in supply chain, we think about trying to reduce waste to then eventually get to continually improving a process. So when I look at students and I talk to students, I think about those things in the same way that when I first started teaching freshmen, well, graduates actually starts with them. When I would interview them, there were things they didn't think that way, right? They weren't used to being taught that way. And now with freshmen, I see the transition from high school to college, and they've not been taught that way either. So, as part of that research, when I went back to get my doctorate, I was always interested in trying to figure out, well, okay, we spend all this time reducing waste and continually improving with process design and implementations. Why are some successful and some not? I was curious about that. So my research topic for my dissertation was that is there a way to predict whether or not a implementation is going to be successful before you launch it so it doesn't fail? And the precursor is really readiness. If an institution or individual is ready for a change, they're going to be more successful with that change. And so that's the model that I built as part of my doctoral dissertation, and it's the foundation for the book that I eventually wrote to help, high school seniors and college students change into a better student by recognizing what elements they were lacking to become ready. Is that?
It is so fascinating because I think you're 100% right. I mean, if you just think about changing things in your personal life,
Yeah,
if you really want to make a major change, if you're gonna be successful, you have to be ready,
yeah.
right?
There's no question
Without,
about it. Yeah,
no, yeah, mentally
yeah,
ready, maybe financially ready. You at
yeah.
least have to understand what's going to be asked and expected of you.
Hmm.
But yet, with college, there really isn't like a singular process to get people ready for it.
No, well, and it's not even thought that way.
Right.
Professors don't necessarily approach it. College students don't. Coaches don't. I do a lot of work with coaches, and they don't think that way. And that's because everybody has their focus and nobody's thinking about it because I actually think there's three major, in my opinion, you can disagree if you want. To me, there's three major transitions. There's the high school to becoming a freshman. There's a college senior or a high school senior going into the work world, and then your marriage. To me, those are the three most, I don't want to use the word traumatic, but they are life-changing events. And the ability to be prepared and ready for them a lot of times dictates the success of your attempt to do them. And I see it with my students because I give all of them their readiness for change assessment and we talk about their results. And they are starting to see it as well because if you don't know what you don't know, how are you supposed to fix it if it goes wrong? And
yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to talk to you about this assessment. So when you and I first, started talking before this podcast, you sent me a preview of the book, which is now out, so people can order it. And I saw the assessment in there as part of the package. So
it's in the book.
So I had my son who is starting to go through the college process take the assessment. So and that was really fun because he was into it, and it's hard to get him to do anything.
Well, that's good. I'm so glad to hear that.
I said, hey, will you help me with some research for my podcast? It's like, and then he started taking it and he got really into this. And it was easy. It wasn't anything difficult, but we had some good conversations from it. So tell me, what are you assessing? What type of questions are in there? What are you?
We assess 6 variables. There's 6 variables that make up readiness, and the first being context, which is where do you, and that particular assessment, all assessments are in those 6 variables, but in the readiness for college assessment, we're measuring, for instance, context is our first variable, and that variable really measures where are you coming from. What's your life like before you get to college? What's your family life like? Questions like, do you have anyone supports you outside of, in the college environment? Do you have anybody at home that cares whether or not you're going to be successful? And the reason we do that is because that kind of frames the background of somebody. And in a business setting, it is the same thing. Do you have somebody that's supportive of that? So in that particular instance with the college assessment, if a person has a strong context score, it is a very strong indicator for ultimate success. If they have a low, it doesn't mean they won't be successful, but the folks with low context, which means there's not a lot of familiar support, you need to be acutely aware of that so that you don't become a victim. It's really easy to become a victim if you have a low context score. Then the next 2 is efficacy, which is, do you believe, not your mama, but do you believe you can graduate from college? Do you think you can be a successful college student? And that one really goes to your self-worth, right? It ties to where you think you are in the scale of delivering. And we did this one in mental health, and that one was an eye-opener for a lot of mental health patients. And then the third item is really informational assessment. Do you know what you need to do to be successful in college? And that's where the book really comes in with a lot of the tools and tricks, but that's a shockingly low number. And the thing is, Cheryl, I agree because I didn't know what I needed to be. When I would have failed, or not failed, that's not the right word. I would not have been ready when it comes to informational assessment of a college curriculum. And then the next 2 are really commitment and belief, in your belief that you can complete it, but your commitment to completing it. And that's, and then, not belief, value. Do you value it? And are you committed to it? Because believe it or not, just because mom and daddy wants me to go to college doesn't mean you're, as a student, value a college degree. Yeah. And why waste the money if you can't convince them to demonstrate the value, which I spent a lot of time in the book doing that. If you have a low value score, it doesn't mean you can't eventually get there. But if you're not there, then that could explain a lot. And I see that with a lot of students here, that some of them don't necessarily think a college degree is going to help them. And then finally, the final variable is change-related effort. And so you're doing and think about diets and things like that with people. What are you doing to become better prepared to be a college student? And so those are the variables that I measure. And that's what your son, that's the assessment that he took, those questions around those ideas.
I wrote all of those down as you were talking, and I'm like, I want to do this almost with everything in my life. I mean, besides
You can. We do. I applied. I come from trucking, right?
Yeah.
And I sat down with a mental health counselor once, a buddy of mine from really high school. I knew him in high school. He's now a PhD in mental health. And he said, "Could this help me in mental health?" And I said, "Well, of course it could." I built a 3-tier assessment for them. One, are you ready to go to counseling? Because if you're not, you're going to bomb. Midway through, are you getting the connection with the counselor that y'all are needing to have? And if you're not, then you need to make a change. And finally, because I never understood mental health with how do you finish mental health? It was, are you ready to exit mental health? And so we built those 3 assessments around that. And we ended up doing 3,000-4,000 of those types of assessment with mental health, because you can apply it to anything. It's not, it's not, but college is such a dramatic change from high school to college that I think it's a particular interesting place to apply.
100%. And as I'm watching from personal experience, my son going through beginning his college search, there's so much being placed on how do you apply? How do you write your essay? Now it's time for SAT. It's the process of getting to college, but there isn't preparation on what are you going to do when you get
I agree. Right? I agree.
Right? That's missing completely.
Yes. Everybody, this transition from high school to college, as far as what type of school you're going to go to, there's tremendous amount of resources there. Lots of people are in that space. But did you pick the right school? And if you did, do you know how to tackle it when you get there? And these first-year experience programs try to do that.
Right.
But it's really hard when you're trying to build community, which is what most of them really focus on. Then this is how you do college, because I try to really limit the scope, because I do a lot of project work. I don't want a lot of scope creep in what I'm trying to help them with. I'm trying to say, let's stay in this lane. So what I call academic Armageddon, which is week 4, when I see the poor kids walking around because they just bombed 4 tests, because they never knew you had 4 or 5 tests in 1 week in high school. That never happened. Well, guess what? It happens at every university. So.
I mean, my son's school doesn't allow them to assign homework or give tests after a long weekend. I was like, you're in for a surprise.
College is not that way. Okay, exactly.
A professor sees a long weekend and they're like, ooh.
I have 2 students, right, that are in 3 of my classes. It's weird. For some reason they end it, and they are hating life because all my tests are kind of sequenced in the same, over 2 days, for example. So yeah, and I don't know what the other professors' schedules are, and we don't even look at them. We just, here's our curriculum. By the way, there's 16 weeks. Oh, okay, there's 16 weeks in the semester. You want to have 4 tests? Well, guess what? Every 4 weeks, we're all giving them a test, and that just piles on them. So I try to catch them before they get too far behind in the early part of the semester to say, look, it doesn't matter. They can give you 10 tests a week if you prepare correctly. And so first, be ready.
And so I have so many questions, but I have one burning one as a mother, and I'm going to pause for a break here and then come back and have you tell me how my son did on the assessment and what, as a parent and as 11th grader, he can take away, because your book really is meant for students.
Yeah, right? It is. No doubt about it.
Right. But it's for students.
Yeah.
So I'm super curious to hear what his takeaway is. So we're going to pause and then come right back. How do higher education decision makers find the right solution when technology evolves at light speed? Well, we usually start with our network. EdTech Connect is the network that's democratizing the higher ed technology conversation. EdTech Connect is free, so anyone with a .edu email address can sign up and list the software and services they use in their role at their school. Once you're in, you can find out what solutions similar schools are doing all over the country. Whether you're looking to find the hot new AI tool, or maybe learn options you have to upgrade your campus search engine, or even get to your short list of marketing solution vendors, EdTech Connect is the place to go. So visit edtechconnect.com and set up your free profile to get a pulse for what's happening with higher ed technology today. Okay, we're back. So before the break, we were talking about the assessment in the book. and being ready for college and the 6 variables. And like I shared, I'd had my son take it and he was really into it, which is very unusual because he wants nothing to do with me right now.
No, I disagree.
Tell me what you learned. And, so I guess I should preface for those listening, the student gets their assessment back. So he received this, though I asked him to send it to me and he failed to do so, but he did receive it and he got to read it. So as we're talking, for those out there who are teaching and are thinking this might be a great tool for them to use in their classroom, or parents who want to walk through this with their child, you do get to see areas where they might need some support. So.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. The way I structured it is that when they submit their assessment every night at midnight, we run how many went through today, and we create an email back based on their score by variable. So it used to have a lot of verbiage, which I found was a little bit, because I'm a trucking guy at heart and I'm pretty direct. And they said, okay, stop writing the responses and start doing videos because you sound really mean when you respond when somebody struggles. So I did. So I created videos for each assessment score, regardless of what they made. And in your son's case, do you want me to tell you how he did?
Okay. I'm super curious.
So you were wrong about the fact that he doesn't value opinion. He highly values your opinion. His context score was extremely high. He feels supported. He feels like people at home care about him. He feels like if he had a problem, he had someone to go to. Extremely high in context. That is the only one he was high in. His value is not there yet. And as a junior, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, he's only 16.
He's only 16, right? That's not a shock, which this tells me he was honest about what he did. He didn't just, when you said he got into it, I believe that because his responses are legitimate, real responses that I think a 16-year-old would say, especially the way I lay the questions out as for a college student. His informational assessment he didn't have enough. He didn't have enough commitment yet because I don't think he did. I think ties someone in with him, the way he responded, based on the commitment because he doesn't know what he needs to know. Right. And then obviously as a 16-year-old, from an effort perspective, he's not done anything yet with some of those questions. So, and I don't blame him because we don't talk about like preparing for the SAT. We talk about, do you have your time schedule for your first semester, knowing which hours you're going to study? So he could obviously not answer those questions because it's really tailored to a student that either is just beginning or it's over that summer between Christmas or between graduation and starting your first year. So,
and that's such an important time.
It is.
Like, isn't the statistic something around 30% of students drop out their first year of college?
They don't come back. That's right. Yeah, that's the number. Yeah, they do. They may go to another institution, but they don't come back to the one they originally chose.
Yeah, correct. And a lot of our listeners are at community colleges, and that's even higher. I mean,
I can imagine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And no, and they're not, and they're even less ready for community college, and they really struggle with that efficacy score, right? Because they've been told maybe the whole time they've been in college or high school, and this happened to my son because he was not the best high school student. All right, I'll give you that. But part of it was he was lazy. And I told him, I said, look, you can't expect to get into where you, well, again, this is why they don't let me write it. I have to say it because I do have some empathy, not a lot, but I have some. Right. But if you're going to be lazy for 2 years and now you want to try to make it up, no. University of Georgia, when the SAT scores are 1,300 and above, are not going to let you in. Yeah. So he went to a community college, but he made a 3.8 while he was there. And then he can get anywhere he wants.
I know.
But if you didn't have, he had me pushing him only mentally. I didn't help him with any of the work. I just helped him with that piece. I wonder what he would have scored. I think he would have scored high on context because we hold him accountable and we call him out on it. And I think you hold your son accountable, at least it seems like it. And he knows he can trust you. So the other pieces and the right fit for him, again, as a university, is something I think you could have conversations around because 4-year versus 2-year initially may be different for him than what maybe you have planned. And that's not a shot. But you don't want to put him in a place where they're not going to be successful. You want to give them every tool they can. And that's why.
It's not even what you have planned, but it's also pressure.
Oh, yeah.
You, like everyone else. I've talked to my son about community college, and he's like, why would I, nobody's going there. Like, but it's like, that might be the best place for you. You really want to be in a lecture hall with 800 people and no support? Like,
son, or it's Dylan, right?
Dylan, yeah.
College is not a destination for a vacation.
Yes.
College is a means to an end for experiences and all that. So you do what's right for you. And it may be an SEC school or an ACC school, but just because it's a junior college or a community college, there's no, if you go there for 1 year to get your ducks in a row and then transfer for 3 years to, Duke, guess what it says on your degree when you graduate? It says Duke. Right? So, and I just picked Duke. No, if anyone from Duke listens, don't get offended. I just picked Duke. Any college or institution. So I just want to get students aligned with where they really are emotionally, physically, psychologically, so you don't have a 30% rate and you end up going somewhere and getting nothing out of that first year, except losing academic scholarships and being frustrated with an institution.
Exactly. So once you take this readiness to change assessment and you get into the book, how have you structured it? How was it structured to help students?
I originally set it up like a workbook, okay? Because what I do is, for instance, I'll give you a great example. The first week is, what's a syllabus? How does the syllabus work? And then the other one is, and I do this in week 1. How many hours a week, Mr. Student or Miss Student, do you plan to study outside of the classroom? Okay, and I think I mentioned this to you before because I teach this section came from teaching an introduction to college section. I had 50 students that I asked that question of. The answer was, for 49 of them, was 0. Because I'm not kidding, 0. The 50th one said, well, on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I have an hour between each class. So I'm going to study that hour. She said 3, and I said, well, that's actually only 2, but okay. You're going to get 2 hours a day, 3 days a week, so that's 6. And so I impress upon them, and I kind of walk them through the math of what it actually takes to be successful in college. Is more like 15 to 25 hours. So now you're in that 30 to 45 hours a week. So guess what? That sounds an awful lot like a full-time job. Because when you go to college, that is exactly your full-time job, is to become a student and be successful. And that's not true for all students, but for the majority, if they follow that as a baseline, then they will, they can, as time goes by, get better at it, and the time will go down. It's very hard to teach them to increase their study time. So that's how I structure. So the first week's that. Second week is, and this came from me. Look, I tried to give quizzes to students, as part of to keep them they won't read. They don't study. So I just completely changed the way, and I did this in the book. I said, look, I'm not asking you to read every single chapter for every single thing, but here's what you're going to do. And I do this with my football players in their program. They have to create a PowerPoint slide. And there's 4 things to that slide. And this is the second part. And I actually was taught this by my dissertation career chatting. This is how she showed me. She took notes, and I kind of modified it, and I turned it into a method for study. Give me 3 themes from the chapter, 3 to 5. Put those themes in your own words and demonstrate you read the material. Give me 3 to 5 questions that you think about in this topic, and then a 4th slide that says nothing but notes. And that way, when I'm lecturing the next week, guess what? They got all of that information in one place. So the entire chapter, the week before that is going to happen in school, they have all that in front of them before they walk into class. Because when I gave them quizzes, they would all fail the quizzes, and then they would listen to the lecture, and then they would try to pass the test. That was the strategy for most students, and it still is, because that's what they're taught in high school, right? They're fed the information, and My sons say they would refuse to take my classes because I would give quizzes before I would lecture. They said, we're never taking your classes for anything.
Yeah, I really like that though, because what I found with some of our younger employees, and if any of them listen to it, it's nobody we have employed right now.
Okay.
But we've seen like sometimes a lack of like critical thinking. It's like they've been pressed to just get good grades and get through the class and get the work done.
Yeah.
But they're not able to think deeper about a topic or ask good questions or problem solve. So
that phrase is exactly why I teach this. Because have you ever asked a college classroom, describe for me what critical thinking means?
yeah, I don't know if they could.
You want to see a holy hush come over the crowd? You ask them that. So I tell them, I said, here's we are supposed to be, as educators, teaching you to be critical thinkers.
Yes.
I give up on it. But I say, one of the things I teach is, from an operations standpoint, I do this with all processes, identify the standard that I want to meet, find waste that's occurring that's suboptimal to what that standard is, and then I want to continuously improve based on those 3 steps. Guess what I just described to you, which, by the way, they can understand that, especially when it comes to some process or operation. That is critical thinking. You're taking a standard, you're identifying the waste, and you're making a continuous improvement. And I tell them all I want you to use that phrase during interviews, because people on my side of the desk will recognize you're doing critical thinking without describing critical thinking.
Well, this is a question that's a little bit off topic, but I mean, it's about critical thinking, but
yeah,
not covered in your book.
No.
I'm having a lunch and learn for my employees in a week about critical thinking. Like, how do you get people started like working on that? How do you work on it?
I show them processes that are broken. And I say, okay, here's a broken process. Tell me what it should look like. That's the standard. Tell me where the gap is and how can we make it better? It's not, you don't call it, it's really lean, right? It's lean thinking, which is an operational strategy, but it really is critical thinking when you apply it to everything. Right. And the problem is, Cheryl, that they hear that phrase, they can't describe it. At least my students, they can't tell you what that means in words. But when you teach them that process I just went through with you, they can remember that. That's because great. It makes sense.
We hear like, we got the work done, but like, you didn't solve the problem.
Right. Like exactly. And they're not taught this coming through high school at all, right? At all. And that's why I say, you can't, and you hear continuous improvement all the time as well. Well, if you can't tell me where you're wasting things, then how can you possibly continually improve something? Yeah. So you first have to get rid of the stuff that's causing the problem. Now we can start talking about continually making it better. And that's in process. And like whoever your employers are, whether it's a marketing strategy, it doesn't matter. You can apply that to any of them. So I didn't mean to go off topic, but.
No, it's so fascinating and it's so timely.
No.
My clients are listening. I'm trying to help like develop it for staff too. And I think that's such a great, a good activity, because we can lecture about it, but it's not actually going to teach people. I feel it's something you have to do.
Well, take an example of something that broke over the last 6 months and put that in a Word doc, right? And then say, okay, let's figure out what should this have looked like versus what did we do? And then go from there.
Continual improvement is also really important.
Oh, yeah.
And not just for students, but for educational institutions. Because I see a lot of my clients being like, we solved the problem, or they get bored with something. We're done. Yeah. And it's like, no, these two evolve.
No. We measured it. Wasn't that the goal? I mean, we measured it. So we must be done. It doesn't matter. What does that mean? Exactly. We measured it. I don't get it. So actually, I've talked to a couple of universities, not so much here because we're working together on our program, but I've talked to a couple of the universities and they said, oh, yeah, we have a first year experience. And I said, yeah, 5 years ago, your dropout rate was 30%. Well, yeah, today your dropout rate is 35%. So do you want to keep doing what you're doing? Or, and I'm not pushing back on anybody's process. And I'm not trying to replace first year, because I actually see that as something different than this. First year, for the most places, are building community between the student and the institution. That is not what I'm doing. I'm trying to tactically arm them with tactics and strategies to be successful. So I see it as complementary, not again working against each other.
I think so too. And I actually was going to ask you about one of your tactics that I'd written in my notes in your book. What are Bubba buckets?
I love them. It's a way to remember time, because
Okay.
I hate the phrase time management. I absolutely can't stand it, because when people talk about time management, it's so arbitrary. Oh, of course everybody wants to measure time. I call them Bubba buckets, because I say every morning you take that. It's a one pager. It's got 168 squares on it, which represent 168 hours of the week. And you put in, what am I going to do under each one of these buckets? And you slap that on the back of your dorm room door. And every Monday when you get up, you know what Bubba bucket am I going to work on this week. So if it's from 3 to 5 p.m., I'm supposed to be studying this, or I'm supposed to be studying that. That's why I call them Bubba buckets, because it gives them something to kind of remember it by. Because it's not time management, it's bucketing your time, which is different.
I love it. And I love it when you say with your accent, Bubba bucket.
Well, I grew up as a Bubba. That's what my sister couldn't say brother, so she called me Bubba.
She
So
called you Bubba.
yeah, she did. So
there was really something, I've been trying to teach this to my son too. There really is something to writing down what you need to do.
I agree.
Just write it down. We used to keep, written calendars. And I wouldn't forget things because I'd written. I mean, we have our phones now, but there's something about sitting down and writing it out and seeing it mapped out.
Well, it's a extreme efficiency, because I used to do, when I first started supply chain, I did dispatch, and people would call and they would ask me all these questions, and they would come from everywhere, and I would write everything down that I was being asked to do. Well, I couldn't go home until I'd crossed everything out. It didn't matter how long I was there but I never had to think about it and waste time remembering. I could always just go to that list and say, yep, I got to do this. And then I found it to be more efficient to write things down, which is why I do that with the time buckets. Because if I know on Tuesdays at 2 o'clock, and I know every Tuesday morning, this is my schedule today, again, you get better at being a student over time. I'm looking for students with less than a 3.0 or college freshmen. Let's fix what's broken. Something's not working, and let's fix it. So
yeah, and I know that you now have an online class for athletes.
I do. Yes.
And their schedules are crazy.
It is. And they all tell me, oh, I don't have enough time to study, which is even more reason to go through this course, because I streamline the work you have to do. So yeah, I'm working with the coaches, and I actually thought they would want the 2.5s and below, right? Because those are the ones struggling to pass. What I found was the athletes also want the 3.0s, because once they get, say you got a 2.8, once he gets over a 3.0, now he's eligible for academic scholarships, and it costs less football money. I didn't know that until I started working with some of the teams. So they actually said, look, let's put everybody below a 3.0 through your program, because it's working with the guys that we have. And it's taking the book and adapting it to a course. And then I give them weekly feedback on how the individual students are doing. That's the only thing about writing the book that I don't like, is I'm not able to see whether or not the people are actively engaged with going through it. And so and other than the ones in my class, because obviously I test, okay, we're going to do chapter 1 this week. You got to tell me something you read in chapter 1. That's the one downside of writing a book and not doing it with the course, but you can't do that with everyone. So I focus on football. We have a couple of soccer teams for the fall we're talking to about implementing it. So it's been a lot of fun. So.
Well, as a marketer, I think that you should follow up with some of the students a year after they go through your class and see what they've implemented and where they are.
I will, but I do follow up with students who've been through my process that have already graduated. I've got one of my football players that told me when he was a junior, because a lot of the strategies I teach in the book, obviously I taught him in the classroom first. He told me, he said, if I would have learned to study like this, I would have never failed a class my entire life. He said, I can't believe how much easier this made it, because he would always wait to the day before the test and try to, cram it all in there, and he was never successful. But with this, they're doing a little bit every week. I'm not asking them to write the War and Peace. It's just a little bit, but it is every week, and that consistency builds on itself. So I will try to figure out a better way as a market. I am not a marketer. I will tell you that right now, but I will try to do that, because we're measuring the GPAs now with the football teams, right? We're measuring, this is where they were, this is where they are now. So I think that'll be an effective measure, but I've asked all of them for feedback as they go through the course. And so they're writing notes and stuff. So, but yeah, that's not my thing.
I know you gotta do it.
Look, I need help with marketing.
Your Bubba.
I do, but there are some things that are inherently for talented people, and that is not I don't see the world that way, right? I see a problem, I try to fix it. That's just kind of, so we all see the world differently, and I appreciate the value. It's just I need to do a readiness assessment to become a good marketer, because right now I would bomb it.
Well, you do have a great message, and it already helped in our household. I enjoyed very much reading the book. It had a great conversation with my son, super interested to learn about his assessment. For those of out there who are listening that are interested in getting a copy of your book or connecting with you, what's the best way to do that?
You can reach out to me at Carey at therci.com. You can just drop me an email, and I can anybody with a .edu email address, I can send you a link for a, I don't know if they call it a sample copy or something that you can take a look at it and review it. I mean, if you don't have an .edu email address, it's available on VitalSource under Guide to Thrive. If you type in VitalSource Guide to Thrive, it'll come up as the first option. It's Guide to Thrive, a Roadmap to College Success is the name of the book, and it's on Vital. So that's the only place I'm offering it right now, is on VitalSource. So,
well, congratulations on getting it up and running. And
thank you.
I think this message is just fantastic, and I can't wait to see where it takes you.
I appreciate it.
Students you're going to help.
Oh, that's the goal, right? That's the goal. Help get their GPA up. Keep your academic scholarship, right? Get off academic that's my goal. So if I get them off academic probation and they keep their scholarship, then we were winning, and they're learning. So, and that's the goal. So I can't thank you enough. I really enjoyed it. I've been looking so forward to talking to you, because we've had such good conversations on the phone. So this was nice. I appreciate that.
The flu, a flood,
remodel. I think I had COVID one time. I mean, it's been awful. I mean, the flood down, it was the flood down here too, right? The hurricane flooded, because this is going back months. We've been trying to do this. So it's so great to finally get a chance to speak with you. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Carey.